Butler. Hazard level A, they take 5 hits to kill, 2 in solo, they'll do 10 damage per hit, power level of 2, max spawn of 7, and are most commonly found on dying. Butlers have 4 phases: roaming, lingering, murder, and berserk. When a butler first spawns, it will immediately enter its roaming phase. If you don't know how this function works, I recommend watching my video on jesters. If you haven't seen that video, I'll briefly cover how it works, as butlers have a small mechanic that makes them different from every other enemy. These white spheres are called nodes, and it's what butlers use to roam. When a butler first spawns, it will choose the closest node and walk towards it. Once it gets to that node, it will check it off and choose another node and do the same. Butlers have a search precision of 5, which just means that once the butler is 5 meters away from the selected node, it will consider the node checked and move on to the next one. Butlers have a small mechanic within their roaming phase that makes them a little different. Once the butler has searched for 6 seconds without spotting a player, he will begin to move much faster and his search precision will increase to 10. This allows him to check off nodes when he's 10 meters away, ultimately allowing him to explore the map much faster. Butlers have a field of view of 110 degrees. The footage you're seeing on screen is what it looks like from their perspective. As soon as a butler spots a player, they will enter phase 2. When the butler enters his lingering phase, he will immediately slow down, begin sweeping, and set the player he's seen as the target player. Understanding how the butler acts with the target player is the most important part of the butler. As soon as the butler spots a player, they become the target player. A 12-second timer will begin where the butler will linger around the target player. If the butler loses line of sight of the target player, then he'll simply check the last location he saw them. Right before this timer is up, the butler will turn and look for other players. If he doesn't spot anyone, then he will attack the target player. If the target player isn't in line of sight when the timer is up, then the butler will go back into phase 1 and attack the target player the next time he sees them, even if it's much later in the day. Here's an in-game example. As soon as the butler spots me, I become the target player. The 12-second timer begins, and if I'm near him when that timer is up, he will enter his murder phase. Here's another example. The butler sees me, the timer begins, and I leave facility. After 12 seconds, if I'm not around, the butler will go back into phase 1, but the next time he sees me, even if it's much later in the day, he will attack me right away. However, if the butler spots another player at any time, then this new player becomes the target player, the 12-second timer will begin, and the same rules I just explained apply to this new target player. If more than one player is in the same room as the butler, he will go back into phase 1 and wait until a player is alone. The butler uses a function that allows him to remember players for a certain amount of time. Thanks to Addy, we have a mod that gives us a visual representation of how this function works. On my screen, you can see a green bubble and a red bubble. The green bubble means that I am the target player, and the red bubble means that the butler knows where I am. If I break line of sight, the butler will only remember where I am for 6 seconds. This comes into play when there are multiple players in one room. The butler will always target the closest player. You can see that when I get close to the butler, I have the green bubble, but if my teammate gets closer, then he gets the green bubble, indicating that he is the target player. We both have the red bubble, indicating that the butler knows where we both are. If I were to break line of sight, the butler knows where I am for 6 seconds. After 6 seconds, the red bubble disappears, indicating that the butler no longer knows where I am, and now the butler thinks he's alone with my teammate. This sends the butler into phase 2 with the target player being my teammate. The 12-second timer will begin, and if the butler is still alone with my teammate when this timer is up, he will enter phase 3. Basically, once I break line of sight, the butler will attack my teammate after 18 seconds. Keep in mind that if there are multiple butlers, they will all act as I just explained, which means that even if there are 10 butlers around you, they'll never attack unless one of you is alone. Also, butlers can see through doors, so hiding behind a closed door does not count as breaking line of sight. As soon as the butler enters his murder phase, he will put away his broom if he's carrying it and bring out a knife. He will relentlessly chase the target player until he has killed them, outputting 10 damage per hit and hitting every 0.35 seconds, meaning he can kill you as fast as 3.5 seconds. If the butler spots another player, he will immediately go back into phase 1 and act as I explained earlier. If you break line of sight with the butler for 12 seconds, this will also send him back into phase 1, but keep in mind he will immediately attack you the next time he sees you unless he has found a new target player. If the butler manages to kill the targeted player, he'll sprint away from the crime scene for 15 seconds, then return to phase 1. If the butler spots a player during these 15 seconds, he will enter phase 2, but if that player is able to see the dead body, the butler will consider himself caught red-handed and enter phase 3. Before I explain the berserk phase, I want to give a huge shout out to CHBoo, Echo Programs, Nalayer, Addy, and Dummy Dude for decompiling the butler, as well as Anti for helping with some in-game testing. If it wasn't for them, we would not have this information, so if you see them in Discord, show them some love. The butler also has a berserk phase that lasts 8 seconds and is activated the moment you hit him. This phase is the same as his murder phase, but he does not care about how many players are near him. He'll bring out his knife and turn much faster, he'll always chase the closest player, and to make this phase even better, if any butlers see another butler in berserk, they will also enter berserk. After 8 seconds of being in berserk, the butler will go into phase 3, which means if you're alone, he will continue to try to kill you, but if he spots another player, then he'll go back into phase 1 and act as explained before. There is supposed to be another way butlers enter their berserk phase. For every quarter of a second you touch the butler, there's supposed to be a 14% chance it'll enter its berserk phase. If the butler were to enter this phase, it would only last 3 seconds, but it wasn't happening when I was testing him. Please refer to the pinned comment for updates on this, as well as any other information regarding the butler. The butler has a really interesting function that says if you smack that subscribe button, he'll never attack you, but it doesn't seem like this function is ever actually implemented. Just for some general information, zapping or stunning a butler will freeze him, but have no effect on his phase or timer. Butlers will take 30 seconds to open doors, although I believe this is a bug. Killing the butler will cause it to inflate and pop, doing 30 damage to anyone too close. This will also knock back any players in close proximity, which can cause lethal fall damage. He will drop a kitchen knife and release butler bees, which have their own separate AI mechanics. Their roaming phase consists of the standard roaming function with a search precision of 5. They have a field of view of 180 degrees. If they spot a player within this area, they will enter their chasing phase. When butler bees enter this phase, they will always chase the closest player. 3 seconds into chasing the player, they will increase speed. In solo, even after the speed increase, butler bees are about the same speed as you while you're walking and shouldn't catch up if you're making very sharp turns. In multiplayer, butler bees are a little faster and will catch up if you don't sprint. If they manage to catch up to you, they'll do 10 damage every half a second, meaning they can kill you in 5 seconds. If you break line of sight with butler bees for 3 seconds, they will be sent back into phase 1. Butler bees take 6 seconds to open doors, making it the best way to get away from them. If you manage to obtain the butler's kitchen knife, you can use it to kill every killable enemy. For host, the knife will do 10 damage every 0.43 seconds. For client, the knife will do 10 damage every time you swing it, making it extremely powerful. You can also one-hit butlers with it, whether you're in solo or multiplayer. Make sure you guys smack that subscribe button, join my Discord if you haven't already, and if you can animate, design moons, or have created any Lethal Company mods, please join my Discord and DM me with your work if you're interested in being part of projects that will be showcased on this channel. First link in the description.